It's a great day to join the discussion here on Weather and Ag in Focus. Looking forward to having you send your calls our way. You can do that on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. If you're not calling us, you might want to be on the website for techsupport.farm and looking at the fence check assessment tool to decide, is this something I need to be doing for my farm or ranch or agribusiness? And the answer that you find might be, yes, I think I need more protection in cybersecurity for what I'm doing. Well, as we join one of our guests today, she's probably on the road somewhere because Marsha travels more than I do. And that would be Marsha Van Leare with Gowan USA. Marsha, what are you covering today?
Actually, I am in very close to home today because I was doing budgeting this week. So, yay.
Nice.
Not really.
I, I
I
appreciate
hate
the
budgeting.
sarcasm you say that with. But
It's
I
hard.
do
It's
know.
hard to budget. You know how it goes.
It is. It is. And I do know though that your one of your favorite things is the field work, right? And stuff that's going on. So I
Yes.
need to ask this. In the travels that you've had, I've picked up some replants that are going on. I've seen hail damage. What are you seeing about the state of the crop? I personally think it's okay. It's an average crop out there right now.
It really depends on where you're at. I would agree with you. I mean, it's okay. It's Yeah, I saw some reseeded canola yesterday. I saw some wheat that looks a little sick. I have seen a little bit of hail damage. I got some pictures of some corn that has some kochia issues in it. Um, Overall, I was down in southern Minnesota last weekend, and I mean, overall, it's okay. Nothing to write home about yet, but there's hope. There's always hope.
Marsha, when you said you saw hail damage, how are you talking like the crop it's got to be replanted or just, I mean, how bad was it?
At this point, there's really not a lot you can do on replanting, so I wouldn't necessarily say I saw a lot that was zeroed out or will be zeroed out. Um, but there's a lot of shredded leaves out there, stuff like that. If it does get zeroed out, they're going to put a cover crop in. That's about all they're going to be able to do at this late in the season.
Right.
Now, I'm thinking ahead about soybeans that are being replanted right now because I literally had soybeans being replanted next door to me last night and this morning. What's your recommendation when it comes to the weed control options? Because we're later in the season, we know that these beans are really going to have to push fast. We're past June 20th. Just as the agronomist in you thinks about it, what are some of the things that you would be reminding farmers to be considering?
The one thing that these guys want to look at if they're doing a replant situation like that, which I still think it's too late, but whole different story. um, we need to look at rotation into next year. So we really need to look at those months after application rotation restrictions. That's going to be key for a lot of these products that are out there. A lot of them are 9 months. Some of them are next cropping season, which it's a little ambiguous when you start looking at things. And that's really key what the farmers are going to have to look at and realize next year that, oh, yeah, that's right. What did I do here and what can I go into? And they really need to start thinking about their crop rotations for next year as they're making this decision.
So, as you've been looking at fields right now, when you've seen any hail damage on, say, small grains, are you in favor of some fungicide on there to give some protection? What's the stage of the crop where you'd say, yeah, you're just going to have to take the damage, we're too late to try to put a fungicide on, anything like that?
Unless we're really probably sitting at, harvest or a pre-harvest interval, I'm always in favor of putting a fungicide out to protect against hail damage. My personal, I like putting a fungicide out. I like doing a nutrient pack, a micronutrient pack. It's going to protect what's there. which is probably, especially this year, is key. We need to protect what
Hmm.
yield didn't get decreased with the hail. Um, and there's a lot of there's a lot of spring wheat right now that's getting sprayed for fungicides anyways.
Right.
So it might change their fungicide package a little bit.
Okay.
Instead of using just a one mode of action or a one product, maybe they'll go with a two product type fungicide package. Um,
Okay.
it's going to help. We know it's going to help. We've seen
All
the
of it.
data on it. It's going to help.
Okay.
And, and Marsha, from what?
I think.
Go ahead, Bridgette. Sorry.
Okay. One last question for you for wheat, Marsha. When you were thinking about Badge SC, tell me more about it because this is a product I just have overviewed briefly, but just tell me the background on Badge SC.
So when it comes to like wheat with Badge SC, we're really looking at it. So it's a bacterial and a fungicide.
Hmm.
So if there's any bacterial issues that are in, the mildews, if we get any of the mildews into the wheat, that's where Badge comes in. But there's also a little bit of a nutritive effect with the copper. So Badge SC is a copper. It's a copper hydroxide and it's a copper oxychloride. So it's two types of copper. Think of it like a fast release and a slow release copper. You have one hitting the leaf and it's protecting right away, and then you have the other one that's hitting the leaf and it's protecting for about 10 days after application. Like I said, in wheat, we do look at it from a fungicidal effect, but we are also looking at it from a nutritive effect. There's a lot of soils in North Dakota that may not be severely copper deficient, but copper on or a copper fungicide on like your wheat, your barley, anything like that, we see a lot of good results on that, especially with grain weight is a big one. And then we're also looking at, like falling numbers. When you look at Badge SC and other crops, take sugar beets for instance, you got Cercospora control. In edible beans, we have bacterial blight control. The only crop that I would probably not look at really using Badge SC on would be canola, and that is because canola doesn't respond that well to copper.
And Marsha, I know you said you've seen some of the crops out there, and you hate to compare year to year, but from what you've seen, and I know there's different places that are going to be a little different, but overall, what does this look like compared to last year at the same time? Because we've gotten a little more precip this year than we had last year. We're wetter this year than we were last year at this time. How is that translating to what the crops look like so far?
I'd say probably compared to last year, the crops might be a little bit behind. They're catching up quickly with the heat, and the only reason why I say they may be a little bit behind is just because of the early cool season that we had.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm looking at it. Last year we saw some corn that was, fairly tall at that point. Soybeans were row closed, everything like that. We're not seeing that quite yet this year. Heat's going to help with that. I mean, that's going to pop everything. So, and that's really key with the upcoming forecast is let's keep the heat, let's keep the moisture going, not too much. Because once again, I was in southern Minnesota last weekend, and that was a little yellow down there. So let's, not too much, but if you can do a thing for us and just keep it going, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, and
I'm with you.
yeah, and unfortunately, when we get these storms like we're going to have tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, there's going to be some locally heavy rainfall with that too. Unfortunately, I wish it was more of a kind of a hit and miss thing, but it looks like from our area, especially and into southern Minnesota as well, they're expecting moderate to heavy rainfall down there as we head into the weekend. So. Not the best news there, but we'll see if we can taper that off just a bit. But we're coming up on the bottom of the hour break. Also, we have to get a qualifier in here for our great grocery giveaway. And today's qualifier is Amanda Carlson of Fargo. Amanda, you have 9 minutes and 70 seconds to call in at 701-293-9000. Again, that's 701-293-9000. Amanda Carlson of Fargo. If you know Amanda, shoot her a text. Say, hey, you better call in to qualify. And it'll be a week from today that we announced the winner out at Kingpins. So, again, today's qualifier is Amanda Carlson of Fargo. If you have any questions for Bridgette, myself, or Marsha, feel free to give us a call as well after the break, 701-293-9000. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The clock is ticking. We are waiting for Amanda Carlson to call us on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. Amanda, you got just about 5 minutes, maybe a little under 30 seconds, but y'all better hustle. If you guys know Amanda, make sure she's aware she is up to qualify for a $10,000 Great Grocery Giveaway. We're doing that next week at Kingpins. That'll be on Thursday, July 10th. We need you to be there in person once you've qualified so that you can, in fact, be the potential winner of a $10,000 Great Grocery Giveaway. Thank you to All Sagar Meats, Kingpins, and ND Estate Services for their part in bringing this prize package to you. Very excited as well about our Here We Grow project this year, where we're custom farming 20 acres of wheat, and the wheat is coming right along. We're heading out. We have the kernels being filled at this point. Things are looking pretty good. Now, some of the folks who've helped to make that happen would include Vision Ford of Wahpeton. And Vision Ford has a long history in agriculture. I don't know if everybody realizes this, but Henry Ford was a farm kid. Yes, he brought us the Model A and the Model T, but he also designed tractors. And he believed that there should be a tractor and a Model A on every farm. So Vision Ford can help you continue that tradition today. You know, matching Fords to go with your tractors. And also Progressive Ag. If you have a crop in the field and you want to protect it with doing some hedging, using some commodities trading, it would be a great idea to contact the folks over at Progressive Ag. Our guest today is also a Here We Grow sponsor. That is Marsha Van Leare. She is with Gowan USA. They bring us Domark, Affiance, and Badge SC. So when we talk about those products, Marsha, a lot of things come to mind, especially a comparison. And if you were to think about, okay, where am I going to use Domark versus where I might use Affiance, can you kind of compare that for folks who might be listening?
This is gonna get me in trouble.
Come on, I'll call your boss Dean and tell him he's not listening today.
So I really look at Affiance. Okay, so Affiance is tetraconazole plus azoxystrobin. So it's a dual mode of action product. Where I really look at using Affiance is in maybe some of those better producing corn acres, soybean acres, even some of those better producing edible bean acres, where we
Yeah.
need to get something out there. We want to protect the crops that way. Um, and I look at that, purely from the agronomic side, but also maybe a little bit on the financial side. Affiance is going
Okay.
to be a little bit more expensive. It's two different products type product. The other thing with Affiance is because it does have a strobilurin, we want to be careful if we're using like a plant growth regulator type product. In the past, there has been a history between strobilurins and PGRs, causing basically the yield to go backwards.
Okay.
So they kind of counteract each other. Where I really see a grower using Domark is maybe on some of the soils that, or some of the production areas that, they're not quite as good. They're not maybe the best producing areas on the farm, but they do a pretty decent job. We don't want to put as much money into those, so let's look at something like Domark. The other reason why I really like Domark on corn, especially, is because we can go out at V5, V6, V8, and that
Okay.
tetraconazole is going to still be in the crop at tassel.
Sure.
Which there might be a few other fungicides that say they're systemic. Domark is a true systemic. We have the data with the radiation and whatnot that we've seen it 56 to 60 days after application. It's in the tassels, it's in the ears, that type of thing. The
Okay.
nice thing with Domark is if a person wants to use like a PGR type product, you're not going to have an interaction between Domark and the PGR. Both of those are synergistic to each other, so we're going to see a yield bump that way. On the hailed acres that we have right now, I would
Okay.
probably lean towards Defiance because of that strobilurin package. It's been pretty well documented that using a strobilurin to protect hail damaged
Mm-hmm.
crops. I mean, that's been well documented through I don't know how many years, and that's where I'd really look at using Defiance.
Okay.
And then Badge, I would really look at using Badge is, that early season wheat control, throwing it in with that early season wheat, going out at flag leaf on wheat, I'd go out at a pint. And then once again in sugar beets and edible beans for bacterial or cercospora. Probably don't see as much of an advantage with Badge on corn. And I really haven't looked that much on soybeans, to be honest.
Okay.
And Marsha, we have an emailer question talking about or asking about weed control. How has it looked so far this season? Are the fields messy, or are they looking pretty decent?
That's really hard to answer.
It depends where you're at, right?
It really does. I mean, the fields that I've walked, I've been happy with the weed control that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some conversations with some growers where maybe some weeds have been missed because recommendations weren't taken into consideration. Going along that route, I mean, overall, I'd say the weed control has been pretty decent this year. There's a few spots where, yeah, we've seen some escapes, but I haven't seen any true train wrecks, which is always
Good.
a bonus.
Yeah, it really is. So I hate to say this, but Amanda Carlson, our time has run out for you to qualify for the Great Grocery Giveaway. You're going to have to try to do that at any of our in-person qualifying stops between now and next week, Thursday. So, sorry, Amanda. As Addison and I have said, I'd kind of be kicking myself if I'd have missed that. Now, Marsha, last question I have for you. You mentioned dry edible beans, and we probably don't talk about those very often because there's always a focus on wheat, corn, soybeans. Can you run through some of the options that you have for your dry edible bean growers, whether it's in fungicides, herbicides, etc.?
So in herbicides, we have a few different products. So we have your favorite, Sonalan.
Yay!
We have my favorite combination of Sonalan and Eptam. And then we also have Permit, which is an SU. So when you start looking at some of the weed research that we've seen through the multiple years, Sonalan at 3 pints, Eptam at 3 pints, followed by Permit, have been some of the best looking beans out there. We have Vita, which you can use as a pre-emerge. Once again, that's a PPO. We don't see a lot of that use over here on the east side of the state. You'll see some more towards the central and the western part of the state. We also have Targa, which is quizalofop, so that's a grass control. And then when it comes into the fungicides, we have Badge SC, we have Domark, and then we have Affiance. So we've got a pretty decent portfolio when it comes down to, really looking at that dry edible bean field. And because it is such a limited, I guess, use options when it comes to that crop.
It is. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I had a conversation with a retailer. He had a customer that should have used Eptam, didn't, and is now scratching their head on what they're going to do to control some of the weeds that escaped. And they really have no other option because they're going into sugar beets. So,
oh boy,
it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you other than here you go. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and Marsha, you're exactly right in the fact that dry edible beans don't always get the pomp and circumstance that so many other crops do. But we're number one in production, always neck and neck with what happens in Michigan. And weed control is vital. You don't have as many options as you might have in some of our other crops. So paying attention and focusing on that and the portfolio that Gowan can bring is a big deal. And thanks for running through that for us for folks to be aware. I really appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Not a problem.
Thanks, Marsha. Have a great 4th. Enjoy it. Enjoy
You
it.
guys too.
All right. Well, there's a few showers on radar. We'll talk about that, and we'll time out when we're expecting the storms to come in on the 4th. All of that and a little bit more coming up right after the break. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Thursday, July 3rd, 1:51 in the afternoon. Light showers on radar right now between, and these are very, very light, between Valley City and Tower City. Also a line of showers approaching the Leonard-Davenport area, and a few showers further south down around the Hankinson-Great Bend area. All that moving east and actually really diminishing. By the time this gets to the Fargo area, just a few sprinkles. You could see the clouds thickening out to the west, and as this passes into Lakes Country, it should totally diminish with just a few leftover clouds. So the rest of the afternoon after this passes through, we'll probably see a little more sunshine break through as we head towards evening, remaining hot and humid, with temps today approaching 90. And then tonight, we're going to see storms developing out in the western part of the state, riding northeastward into the Devil's Lake Basin, northeastern parts of the state into northwestern Minnesota. And some of those could be on the strong to severe side. Most of those staying north of the 94 corridor. And then we'll drop off into the 70s tonight, and then a hot, humid one tomorrow, a heat advisory in effect for much of the area. It does exclude the far northern valley, though, as heat index readings tomorrow between 100 and 105. Storms will develop on a cold front after about 5, 6 o'clock, and then become more numerous as we head throughout the evening. And some of those are expected to be on the strong to severe side, with hail, damaging winds being the main threat. We'll keep an eye on that. Those storms will last into the overnight hours before exiting by Saturday around lunchtime, with improving conditions as we head into Saturday evening. And then less humid weather for Saturday evening and into Sunday. Now, if the fireworks displays get canceled for your specific community tomorrow, which unfortunately a lot of places probably will be, Saturday evening looks much, much better, and it'll be less humid as well. This weather report has been brought to you by Progressive Ag Risk Management Specialists. So we're going to have to dodge some storms, Bridgette, but like you said, for the corn and everything, this heat and humidity, that's a bonus. That's good news.
Well, it's summer, and every time you're at an event, you're probably seeing the Dippin' Dots stand and considering how many of them should I eat. Well, did you know they were never actually intended for human consumption? They were developed for cattle.
Get out. Like the ice cream version, or?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, Dippin' Dots. Actually, a microbiologist back in 1988 was working in Kentucky, and he was trying to figure out a way to feed cows more efficiently. So one of the ways was freezing cow feed at 350 degrees below zero and turning the food into little pellets. Also, think of that as a cool way to literally cool the animal too. You're putting something cool in your mouth. Usually it's just water, but here would be a way to cool off the animal. So he took that concept and froze ice cream with liquid nitrogen, and that created the Dippin' Dots beads that we're all very familiar with. Well, unfortunately, due to some not great business decisions, this product changed hands, and it was purchased by a investment firm out of Oklahoma, and they really had a good sense of business. So they began licensing this flash freezing technology in 2018. So even pharmaceutical companies were using it to increase the shelf life of certain pill products. But then Dippin' Dots was approached by plant-based meat companies that were just starting to take off. Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, who had these multi-billion-dollar valuations, which just PS, they no longer do. That has changed dramatically. But what they were doing is they would feed their ingredients through Dippin' Dots flash freezing process, and it came out as little pellets that would simulate the consistency of natural fats. So if you have had a plant-based burger, bacon, or sausage, it probably has gone through the Dippin' Dots process, which even originated for cattle, not for humans.
Interesting. Huh. And they're not sold in grocery stores either, unless they just started.
Because grocery stores can't keep them cold enough, so Dippin' Dots are not sold in grocery stores.
Ah. See, we got to get a freezer that can keep them cold enough in the grocery stores so they can.
Yeah, and they don't right now.
Right. Wow.
So that's the problem. Now, this is also the time of the year. A lot of people are taking their horses out for trail rides, fairs, shows, etc. This can even happen with cattle, but their feet can become punctured by a foreign body. It might be nails, splinters, fencing staples, all sorts of things can happen. And when it does happen, vets remind us that one of the best ways for treatment when you see the incident, especially the animal is limping and if you didn't see it happen right away, put some padding underneath that foot, wrap it in a shirt or even a diaper, and then call your vet, tell them you're bringing the animal in because they're going to want to do a x-ray. Now, the natural inclination is to just pull that foreign object out of their foot. But doing that, the body starts to immediately heal. And so the vet might not be able to judge how deeply or damaging that problem was. But if you leave it in, the vet can do the x-ray, and then the veterinarian can also safely remove that and treat and diagnose properly in case there's any lingering effects, etc. So yeah, animals stumble, things get punctured into their feet. I mean, we do. That's why we get tetanus shots. And so it's best to talk to your veterinarian if something like that happens so you don't wind up with a lame animal at the end of the situation. Yeah. I remember seeing those things happen in the past. Prior to x-rays, I have a family member who tells a story about a horse stepping over a wooden fence post, but stumbled and broke off a piece of the wooden post, and it went up through the sole of the animal's foot into the hoof. Oof. And the way to get rid of that was they sewed a leather boot that they put over the horse's foot, the hoof, and then they would pour sweetened condensed milk in there every day to create infection. And they were treating with antibiotics, but the reason they wanted the infection was the infection would actually pus the area, and then it would force that splinter out. So they took the boot off and were able to remove the splinter. Now, this happened like 40, 45 years ago. We have far better technology these days, but that was just one way that they combated it.
I would hope so. Well, want to thank everybody for joining us here on Weather and Ag in Focus. Have yourself a safe 4th of July. We'll keep you informed in case we do have any severe weather tomorrow evening. Hopefully that stays below severe limits, but definitely something we're keeping an eye on. So for Bridgette and myself, I want to thank everybody again. Don't go anywhere. The best of Jay Thomas Show is coming up next.